O God, may our candles this evening illuminate our story and tell the good news that the light of the world has come. Your light is a light for all, igniting a flame within the soul, warming us from within, radiating love, lighting our lives with the presence of God come alive in human flesh within us and among us. May your light shine in us now and always. Amen.
So if your family is anything like the family that I grew up in, you will have a script for Christmas. It's probably been written down over years, perhaps even generations, inherited from parents and grandparents, or Better Homes and Garden, or Martha Stewart, or somebody. So every year, about the middle of December, we start to clean the house with a vigor unmatched by any time for the rest of the year. We wash the dogs, sometimes even the children. We send out Christmas cards, we make lists, we prepare recipes. We follow time-honored practices. Do we open presents on Christmas Eve or Christmas morning, or one on Christmas Eve and the rest on Christmas morning? The Christmas script honors tradition, and tradition at its best serves the larger blessing of hospitality, of making room for friends and family to feel welcome, cared for, and loved. But following the script also spares us from anything unexpected or unintended. It brings order to a sometimes chaotic and frenzied season. And it commends us for staying focused, for getting done the things that simply need to get done. But still, we should be cautious about the script, because if we're not careful, the script can make slaves of us, right? It can enslave us to a point that we miss the wonders that might be going on around us, the blessing that is being born once again among us. So I have a question. How many of you, either now as children or in your lives of children, have ever participated in a Christmas pageant? So I'd say that's a fairly close to the majority, right? So there's a Methodist missionary named Doug Ruffle who served for many years in a small city in central Argentina. And he served this kind of small, tight-knit church called Peace Community Church, kind of a little small side street off the main part of the city. And every year, like tens of thousands of other congregations all over the Christian world, they put on a Christmas pageant. But one year they decided to do it a little bit differently. Instead of doing it inside the sanctuary, inside the church, they thought that they would take it out of doors, because December in the Southern Hemisphere is early midsummer, so it's nice and warm and pleasant. They took it outside, and they decided instead of doing it just for themselves, they would invite everyone from the neighborhood to be a part of it. So they invited all the neighborhood children, whether they were church members or not, to come in and be wise people, shepherds, angels, whatever they wanted. And they even got a real donkey to carry Mary in to the front of the church, which was going to serve as a centerpiece, the stage of the pageant, and the church's front door would be the front door of the inn. Now, I don't know about you, but for as long as I can remember, the pivotal moment, the great dramatic moment of every Christmas pageant is when Mary and Joseph come up to the door of the inn. And just before they knock, there's that sense, William Faulkner wrote about this, right? This notion that there's a script to it, but you don't quite yet know what might happen. You don't really know what's going to happen at that knock. You kind of know, but you always wonder, will it go differently? Well, Reverend Ruffle tells a story about how it went differently one year. So one year, the plum roll of the innkeeper went to a 12-year-old boy, the son of the church custodian, whose name was Facundo. And Facundo, at 12 years old, was over 6 feet tall.
He's a big kid with apparently an incredibly gentle and generous spirit. So he's waiting behind the door of the church. The pageant director is standing next to him, ready to feed him his lines if they're needed. And Mary comes up on the donkey. Joseph is with her. They have that exhausted look on their faces. It's been a long journey from Nazareth. And they come up to the door, and Joseph knocks. The door opens, and there comes Facundo. He stands out in front of the whole neighborhood, arrayed in front of him, Mary and Joseph. And he sees Mary on the donkey, and his eyes go wide. And he is silent. And there's a nervous murmur, some giggles going through the congregation. And he can't say anything. He is just awestruck by the spectacle. And the church school director is behind the door whispering his lines. Now, for those of you who've been in the pageant, when Joseph says, "Do you have room for us?" what does the script say? There's no room at the inn, right? Now, again, I don't know about you, that always struck me as pivotal to this story, right? I mean, we're gathered here because on some level we acknowledge this claim that the Christian church has made for 2,000 years, that God is born in this child, and yet we can't find room for him. And even if you're skeptical about the story, here's what you're faced with. A young mother and her husband show up at your door, and they are pregnant, and they have traveled dozens of miles, a journey they probably did not want to take, and they show up at your door. And they say, "Do you have any room for us?" And the answer is no. Door after door, place after place, home after home says, "We have no room for you." So Facundo is standing there dumbstruck by the spectacle. And maybe he is, it's not so much the spectacle of Mary on the donkey. Maybe there is something about this moment that simply does not make sense to him. Maybe in his gentle and generous spirit, in his 12-year-old sense of what is right and generous and fair and just, he just cannot bring himself to say, "We have no room for you." So he stands there and he is silent. And everyone is getting a little bit nervous. So Joseph gives it another try. "Do you have any room?" And still there is silence. So Joseph, being a good ad-libber, just goes to the next line. "Listen, it's been a long, hard journey. We're tired. My wife is expecting a baby. Do you have any room?" And still, Facundo is silent. He cannot bring himself to say the next line, which is what? Right? Stable. There's a stable. You and your pregnant wife can go and give birth to your baby with the animals. Again, I don't know if Facundo was simply that the moment was too big for him or not, or again, if it just didn't make sense to send this woman into the stable to give birth. So they're all standing there, a couple hundred people in the congregation. Joseph, who is getting more and more flustered as the moment goes on. Facundo standing there, discouraged and dejected. The church school director feeding lines in a frenzy behind the door. "Just say it. There's no room. We have a stable." And then, according to the way the story is told by Doug Ruffle, something goes off in his head. And he stands erect to his full 6-foot height, and he says, "You can have my room." You can have my room. Because he and his family lived in a few small, humble rooms at the back of the church property. And this little boy could not bring himself to send them to the stable. Even though the stable was a fairly nice little erected piece of dramatic scenery down the block a little ways, he still couldn't bring himself to send them there. You can have my room. There was sheer silence. The congregation had no idea what to do. Joseph threw up his arms, let the donkey go. But Mary, right? Mary, throughout this entire story, has been the one who has seen the story kind of go off script a little bit. And she's always the one who sits there and ponders and discerns. She may not know exactly where the story is going, but she knows who is guiding it. She knows that there is a God behind this story that is guiding it to where it needs to go. So she's sitting there on that donkey. Everything is in disarray. Story's in tatters. Her husband is frantic with confusion. Facundo is standing there, having made this gracious and generous offer. And Mary says, "Okay, that's really nice of you." And she gets off the donkey, and she and Joseph and Facundo go through the church doors and back into his room. And the pageant is over. The audience breaks into spontaneous applause. Some of us are left to wonder what is going to become of the wise men who are waiting in the wings, or the shepherds who are waiting for their big moment. But it doesn't really matter, of course, right? Because the wise men aren't supposed to get there for another 2 years anyway, and we are going to trust that the angels will guide the shepherds to where they need to be. We all have a Christmas script, right? We all have a sense of the way things need to look and be, how they should go, how they should sound, what should be said. But Christmas really reminds us that God is constantly going off script. Right? God probably doesn't even have a script. Because if he did, he probably would not have imagined that he was going to be born in a manger in Bethlehem. Why not a palace in Rome or Washington? Why in this humble place where life was so incredibly fragile? God is constantly going off script. Why shepherds? Why a young woman in this place? Why this time? So with God, there really is no script. There is only our willingness to listen and discern, to watch out for those moments of great wonder, to be attentive to the things that God is calling us to do, to make use of whatever gifts we have to bring the things that we celebrate in this season to life. Hope, joy, peace, and love. We don't need another script other than that. So Merry Christmas to you all, and may God bless the coming year with all of those things and many more gifts as well. Amen.